resilience, so appropriate for our first in-person. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsors. First, La Cuchara for their lovely hospitality. And a quick plug, the restaurant is open for reservations tonight. The bar will stay open till about 6:15, and then it turns into a cash bar till about 6:45, at which point we're going to have to clear the decks for the dinner crowd. So if you can, stay for dinner. The food's delicious, and they're a lovely family. A really warm thanks to our loyal supporter and sponsor in Meals on Wheels of Central Maryland. If you guys would raise your hands, we've got a really nice group of folks here from Meals on Wheels of Central Maryland has done an amazing job. I mean, we could do a quick, just if you could guess how many people in need they fed in the last 15 months. Who wants to take a guess? 3.5 million people.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. It really is, and that deserves a round of applause for sure. So for aging and homebound individuals throughout Central Maryland, Meals on Wheels does more than deliver meals. They provide support and safety net services that help sustain health, promote independence, maintain economic stability, and improve overall quality of life. So thank you so much for your support and for being here. We are really fortunate that we have several elected officials here tonight. So I want to welcome Councilman Izzy Patoka.
Stand up, Izzy.
Delegates Lisa Belcastro and John Cardin. And of course, Senator Shelley Heddleman. Thank you for being here. And now, you didn't come here to hear me, but I will say, mark your calendars for our next in-person meetup, God willing. September 28th at Green Spring Station. We're going to have a conversation with the general manager, and actually he's the chairman of the board of, he's the general manager of YPR, our very own YPR, but he's also the chairman of the board of National Public Radio, and that'll be at Green Spring Station on September 28th, so I hope to see you all there. And now, Scott, take it away.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Good. Well, thank you all for being here. I've had an especially unusual day today. We're all starting to get back out into the world. I spent this morning with a relative, a child of mine who has a serious medical issue over at Hopkins and the University of Maryland. And then I went over to the chimp house at the zoo. And I'm on the Animal Welfare Committee of the zoo. So I want to first thank both these gentlemen because out of the budgets of both their budgets, they help support the Maryland Zoo. For those of you who haven't been to the Maryland Zoo in a while, it is phenomenal now. They've built new Africa exhibits. The penguin exhibit is Disney-esque. It is just gorgeous. If you have an afternoon and you want to see a great zoo, Maryland now has a great zoo in Baltimore. It really does. So that was an interesting day. And then I came here to do our first outdoor event. Now, these two guys, look at them a second. Think what the problem is. They both make me look really old, okay? They're young, good-looking guys with great careers behind them and great careers in front of them. And the other unifying feature is they actually care. These are two guys that I've been really impressed by, and I try not to curse in public, so I won't, but they really give a you-know-what, okay? And my wife yells at me when I go, so usually, but somebody should let her know I did not curse given the opportunity. But they really care about the city and the county. They've brought transparency, they've brought energy that was needed, and they've brought absolute integrity to what they're doing, and it's really wonderful to see. And the Baltimore area needs that. You know, the test of people in politics is not the good times. It's the bad times. It's going through a war. It's going through a pandemic. I mean, think of the great presidents you can think of. They went through wars and did a good job. These guys have been through a war for the last year and a half. And unfortunately, it's not over yet. There are too many people, and excuse the term, idiots, who are refusing to get vaccinated. I'm a physician. I'm tired of arguing with people over it, and I can only come up with that definition of people that don't get vaccinated today. I'm not a politician. I don't have to keep from offending people. But These guys, unfortunately, have to deal with the sequelae of that. And here we're on the verge, and this will be the first question I'll ask both of you. Here we're on the verge of seeing a resurgence of this virus because not enough people are vaccinated. The Delta, whatever the variant is, the new variant, is entirely because not enough people are vaccinated. And those that harbor the disease harbor the opportunity for the mutations to occur. It's that simple. And when people, so I don't want to get on my soapbox too much on this, but let me turn it to these guys. You're about to see a resurgence. If each of you comment on a couple of things. Comment on what we're doing to get our hospitals and our infrastructure ready, because I think we're going to see a very busy fall of COVID patients. And B, how do we get the public to get vaccinated? Mayor, if you would be kind enough to start.
Well, yeah, first, can everybody hear me? Well, thank you, and thank you, Doctor, for having us and for saying what we can't say about people who choose not to get vaccinated, even though I'm more likely to say it than my good friend, the county executive is. But I think it's a few things. One, for us, it's about we haven't stopped, right? We continue to operate like we're in an emergency situation because we are. And for us, what that means that my health commissioner and myself, we're consistently talking with our hospital leadership. She convenes calls with our hospital leadership. I do the same thing to making sure that we are monitoring the situation. Really, people say day by day, but it's really hour by hour when you're talking about a situation like COVID-19. Preparing, hearing from them, what they're seeing each and every day, so that we can make the adjustments from a government standpoint that allow them not to be flooded like they were before, allow for us to have that deeper conversation with them, because we have to understand, and I always say, especially for me, because 11 hospitals in the city, and we know that people come from all over, right? When you're talking about the great hospitals that we have in Baltimore City, that comes with a high level of responsibility of understanding the totality of this COVID emergency. So we're going to continue to work with them each and every day.
Are they ready?
They are as ready as they can get. What we all can do, and what we're doing very intensely in Baltimore, is that we're moving away from the mass vaccination sites. We know that that's how you had to start. But what I've directed the health commissioner to do, and what we do each and every day now, is that we use our data. Our data determines where we're going with our vaccine clinics. So if that zip code area has a low number of people vaccinated, that's where we're going to go. We also know the barriers that we have to break down, right? Especially in Baltimore City, especially in the African American community, where we know for a fact the medical community at times has used us as guinea pigs. That creates another level of hesitancy that you will even see over the normal level of hesitancies for people. So using credible messages, we're doing everything, right? I did a interview with a good childhood friend of mine on 92Q on Pork Chop, and we're using things like that. We're using local rappers, local artists, people that have standing in community. Folks are tired of hearing me talk about COVID. They're tired of hearing Dr. D talk about COVID. We're using credible messengers and people in the community to deliver that message to get as many people vaccinated as possible. And then also, you just have to be real with people. Tell them, very bluntly, everyone that died last month was unvaccinated. Do you want that to be you? But more importantly, especially as I've been saying to the younger folks in Baltimore their entire time, you're most likely not going to die. But guess what? You're literally, our generation has literally been killing our parents and grandparents because we're so selfish and so self-absorbed that we won't do something as simple as get a vaccination. I couldn't live with it. I lost my grandmother not to COVID. I could not live with causing someone in my family to lose their life because I was afraid to get a shot that I know works. And breaking down these other things. People are like, well, I don't believe in vaccinations. Well, did you go to college? Yes. How many vaccines did you have to get to go to college? Right? We have to be honest with people. And that's the only way that we're going to reach them where they are.
The stunning point you just made was none of the people that died last month in the city were vaccinated. That's amazing. County executive, sort of the same question. How's the county getting prepared for this? And how do we get folks in the county vaccinated?
Well, I'll add not only all the deaths, but almost all the hospitalizations, right?
Yep.
So I just want to echo the mayor's comments, Scott, and thank you and Jmore for convening this conversation. Thanks to all of you for being interested enough to be part of the dialogue here. And if there's follow-ups, let us know. I got to say, this is not the first event that the mayor and I have spent together. We've done Sunday. We were together Sunday. We've been at Goucher when I was there to introduce him for a commencement speech. But I think that this is really, and COVID interrupted it for a moment, but there's a real commitment to this region. And I don't want to lose sight of that in terms of what this moment means as we have these conversations. But a lot of what we're doing is not dissimilar from Baltimore City, because we're facing the same challenges as local leaders. And so we're both fortunate that we have these incredible health officers and health teams that are out there leading and serving and saving lives. I'm hopeful, really, that we can avoid the next thing by doing the work now and focusing on those vaccine efforts and becoming more surgical in addressing that vaccine hesitancy among young people, among Black and brown communities, among conservatives. He had pork chop. I got to talk to Persia. So I think I win that one, but she wasn't. I
got the short end.
But it really is about having those validators. It's about going to where people have questions or reservations and meeting them where we are. I mean, that's my faith tradition, is go to meet people where they are. That's the only way you can pull them in. And so that's what our vaccine efforts are, is literally going house by house, faith tradition by faith tradition, and house of worship by house of worship to get to that place where we can convince people. Because the truth is, if we like being in person, if we like being unmasked, if we like being open for business, we like doing the things that we love, like that's the other sacrifice. And I think if young people in particular understood that is what they could lose again, they would change their mind very quickly about what a vaccine means to them. It's very similar.
So thank you. This event will be seen by all of you, but typically we get a couple of thousand views online for these events to watch, which is always nice. And I'm sure the magazine will cover it too, which reaches 12,000 houses every single month. I mean, it's really, Jmore, since its inception a few years ago, is now the widest reaching Jewish-oriented press in magazine, whatever you call it, in the Baltimore metropolitan area, which is really very nice, with over 10,000 people seeing it every month. It's really wonderful. Thank you for doing this. Let's talk a bit about workforce. What I'm hearing from folks, for example, in skilled nursing centers, which for all you all know that the nursing centers got hit harder than any other place when it came to COVID. No other place got hit, and we were probably less prepared there than anywhere else, unfortunately. They're having a problem with staffing. On one hand, the economy's been hit hard. You'd think lots of people would want to be coming back in the workforce, but do you really want to go work in a place where your risk of getting COVID is the highest, where the wages aren't that great? How do you address, and you're hearing this from a lot of businesses on workforce. Talk a little bit, maybe the county executive would go first, on how you're addressing the workforce issues that are tied into this pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say unfortunately, nursing homes are just the tip of the iceberg in terms of workforce challenges. I bet you if you ask the restaurant and bar industries, they're experiencing crazy staff shortages. We had a roundtable discussion yesterday morning with Senator Ben Cardin with a bunch of the businesses across Baltimore County that we helped through this pandemic, and they are seeing that it's not just the concern for health, but it's also people are just sort of reevaluating what's important and what are the priorities. And one of the most striking comments to me was, I am looking for life balance in my work. I don't want to work to live. I want to be able to actually enjoy my family and my friends and have that balance. I think that balance includes health and safety. So it is working with our businesses and our departments and agencies to make sure that people are safe and doing work. It's about identifying those pipelines for workforce development. But it's also like providing technology and platforms to help businesses reimagine what managing looks like in some industries. I mean, some people might not go back to what was, and I know there are certain industries where you can't do that. And there's a whole different set of challenges there, but it's really about having those conversations. I think we're in many ways in uncharted water as it comes to sort of rebounding from this, not just from a health perspective, but from a workforce and economic development perspective.
And so some people will just never go back to those industries, and we have to rethink those industries.
Or we'll only go back under a different set of rules and circumstances, right? And I think that employers, the employers who recognize that and are willing to pivot and respond to that are going to be the ones who are most successful. And that includes us as employers ourselves, right? people looking to do government work might value sort of more flexibility or ability to work from home occasionally, or do you have the filtration systems? Do you have the PPE? What's your flexible leave schedule like? I mean, all of those things I think are going to be reevaluated as we sort of come out of this thing. And I think that is going to be front and center long beyond this pandemic. Very
good. In the city, you've got your own set of issues on top of this that you started with, which made this even harder.
Yeah, I think for me, and I think, let me say that I agree with everything the county executive said. This really is a point, not just for the country, but really for the world, about how we think about work, how we think about workforce, how we think about all of that. Because some people are never coming back, right? And I always say that in the city, COVID, for many people, opened many people's eyes to things that have existed longer than I've been alive. And now what COVID did was exacerbate these inequities that have been existing in Baltimore for far too long and put them front and center for everyone to see. And when you think about restaurant, when I think about even, for example, some of our workforce, right? One of the hardest hit areas for us has been solid waste because these are folks who can't take off. They didn't get to take off, and not only were they putting themselves in danger by working in these close quarters, working with trash and all of these things each and every day, they also working 3 times as harder because everyone's home and there's more trash for them to pick up. And folks didn't think about that, and we had robust programs where we were going out and hiring young people who needed jobs, and they were coming in, and I was going out with the crews, and every time I went out, I wanted the crews to be like, Brandon, remember that young man we hired last week? He quit already. He says he couldn't do the work. And that happens in so many different areas. And what we have here, I think, in the midst of this really tragic situation is an opportunity to understand how we really can invest in systems and people in a better, more equitable way. How someone doesn't have to, and this is not really just a Baltimore City, Baltimore County, or Maryland, this is really a country issue. How someone doesn't have to work 3 jobs in order to provide for their children, right? And what that means for so many other folks. When you think about our young people, for example, I always tell folks, prior to becoming mayor, I was a middle school basketball coach. It's the thing that I miss the most about that I'm not able to do. But I had young men and young women that played for me whose parents never got to see them play, right? But now, because of COVID, and the way the world changed, they're actually getting to spend time with their kids. Who's going to want to go back to never seeing their kids except for in the morning when they look out to see if they're in their bed, and at night to make sure that they sleep when they get home? No one wants to do that. And it's up to all of us to really be creative on how we change the way we work. We're looking at the city. Everyone never is going to want to ever all come back in the office. Can we allow people to work flexible hours? Do we have to think about government going into a more 24/7 hour for everyone? Do we allow people to have what we call in school an A-day, B-day schedule where certain people come in, certain people stay at home? All of those things matter. And of course, for us, as we then deal to reimagining what we know as our central business district, how we are evolving and creating those office space things, because the world is never going to be the same. And we have to be ahead of what's the next thing that's going to be for all of us.
So let me jump on something you just said. You started to talk a little bit about good things that happened during all of this. People got to spend more time with their kids. Talk about resiliency. Talk about some of the good stories. Look, the pandemic's been horrible. I mean, it's been horrible for everybody. But some people have made the most of it. Some people have done phenomenal things during it. If you've got some stories like that, tell us those stories, Mr. Mayor.
Wow. I mean, I have a lot of them. I think what I always say about Baltimore, when I say Baltimore, I mean not just the city, but the region. When you want to see the true spirit of Baltimore, allow a few things to happen. One, allow for the Steelers to come to town, or the Yankees to come to town, the Red Sox to come to town, right? That goes without saying. But 2, allow for us to be in a crisis situation, because we show up and we take care of ourselves like no other city. The best story I can tell you is about people just looking out for their neighborhoods, right? I was in East Baltimore, and I just happened to be driving on my way from one event to another, and I saw a group of community people who I know pushing a shopping cart down the street, literally knocking on every single older adult's neighborhood in their neighborhood to provide them food. That doesn't happen everywhere. And these were folks who just decided to do that. They knew where we will be giving out the food. They knew that they didn't want their older adult neighbors to risk their health in coming out. And they said, you know what? We're going to deliver that food to them. I saw neighbors who we have parents, right? Think about it like this. We have the people that work at Hopkins, the people that work at they're younger folks who have kids, right? They didn't get to stop working. You know, they couldn't be at home to help their children log in on the Zoom, right? And some folks who just didn't have that opportunity. I saw neighbors saying, okay, I'm working from home, right? I'm going to have 5 or 6 kids in my house working on their school. That's the kind of thing that you saw. People supporting businesses, going out and saying, we're all going to go to this place to carry out. Everyone knows that I love Coco's crab cakes. And even I had to wait in line to get a Coco's crab cakes because every night there was a line of people waiting to just make sure that they survive. That's what Baltimore is truly about. And I think that's the most positive thing that I can talk about in the pandemic.
Fantastic. And Mr. County Executive, first of all, you got to talk about your favorite crab cake and then talk about some stories during the pandemic that you can relate to this group.
Yeah, Costas Inn on North Point Boulevard. I'm put up against Coco's is also very good. I did wait in one of those long lines as well, so we do believe in regionalism.
Costas is good.
I would say, the mayor, those stories were replete across the Baltimore region, right? And so whether it was that or, being out with our legislators, giving out almost 20 million meals throughout this pandemic and seeing the incredible food insecurity, partnering with folks like the Amigos of Baltimore County and other just these affinity groups that have really sprung forward and really tried to serve and meet the need in their community, neighborhood groups handing out masks and sewing at home, touring LifeBridge Health and seeing them actually making their own PPE for their employees, seeing how our businesses like Route 1 Apparel and Towson pivoted from being an apparel shop to making masks, and the governor making them very popular with, wear the damn mask and giving them the shout outs. But those are the stories of resilience that stick to me. Seeing our employees step up every day to say, I'm a Rec and Parks employee, but I want to be a vaccine coordinator. Terry Sapp, this is one of my absolute favorite stories of the pandemic. Terry Sapp was our vaccine coordinator at the Maryland State Fair, which the governor has called a national model in terms of mass vax sites. Terry, if you didn't know, is actually a roadie for Twisted Sister. But what's interesting is he took those logistical skills from being a roadie and doing the road tour stuff for a major rock band, and he applied those principles to vaccination clinics. And that, coupled with just how happy our staff were to help people. Our employees day in and day out were genuinely happy to see what they were giving to other people as they put that dose in their arms. And people left feeling hopeful. And I remember the first time walking into that vaccine clinic because of Terry and our incredible health staff and all of our employees who stepped up and our volunteers. And I just felt this incredible sense of we can beat this thing. And it was the first time I actually ever felt that way through the pandemic. And it was that sense, as the mayor said, of resiliency and of coming together and saying, like, we are better than this, we are stronger than this, and we can beat this together. So that's what I take from the whole experience.
So are you going to get Dee Snider to do a commercial for you from Twisted Sister?
Sean, that's a great idea. I think we should work on that. I think it's a collaboration with Visit Baltimore. Now we'll have like a whole concert. It'll be great.
So let's talk a little bit about business, and then we'll talk about how are we doing for time? Okay, that's fine. We'll go another 10, 15 minutes and then take questions. Small businesses. I drive around the area. It looks like the smallest businesses, the little restaurants, the little hair salons, they seem to have taken the worst of this. Yeah. The big businesses like the Amazons of the world and the Instacarts did great because people didn't want to leave their homes. How do we turn that around again? Because their small businesses are important. Mr. County Executive,
sure.
First
actually, I toured it. So we did one of our district days before this event, and actually we toured some of those small businesses. We toured a small restaurant, we toured a flower and spa shop over in Woodlawn, and that resiliency and entrepreneurship, it's there, it's alive, and they want to succeed and thrive. And I will say that, just like the city did, we pushed out between $25 and $30 million of focused small business support, because they didn't get the PPP, they didn't get some of the larger grants, which were incredibly helpful and I think helped sustain our larger businesses too. But we were intentional about, we had 35 or 40% of our grants went to small and women-owned and minority businesses, which is far exceeds what the county does.
But there's a lot of empty shops right now. Are there programs to help people go into business and fill that space?
We lost a lot fewer than we expected, to be perfectly honest. It was everyone we lose is unfortunate, but it was anticipated we would lose up to 40% of our restaurants and bars when this thing started, and I can count on my hands the number we actually lost. But in terms of moving forward, we are expanding our Small Business Resource Center. We're looking at things like loan guarantees, not just for home purchases, but also for our businesses who are looking for access to capital, who might not have it if they're not a larger institution. I think this gets to the mayor's point of like what this pandemic laid bare in terms of the inequities and the access to opportunity. And we're talking about, this isn't about just getting back to where we were. This is about aspiring to where as a society we should have always been. And as we recover, as we have this American recovery, this ARPA funding coming in, as potential infrastructure is coming in, we have to be thinking about that and be intentional about investing in ways that open up additional doors to opportunity, especially to those who are struggling or looking to start that small business.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I would just say ditto. But I think that what I always say, Mr. County Executive, is that we can't go back to normal. Normal wasn't good enough for far too many people and far too many businesses. I know my family runs multiple small businesses just up the hill here in Park Heights, and know the struggles that they went through. And to be quite honest, because basically everyone that works there is a family member, is how they were able to survive, right? But for us, we were very particular too about the money that we give out. We hyper-focus on small businesses, hyper-focus on women business, on minority-owned businesses, because we know those are the ones that need it the most, and they were the less likely to get the other resources. But now, and I think I have to give a big shout out to Al and the folks that visit Baltimore about how we're being intentional. Al and his folks are using those folks as we brand the city about coming back from and making sure that they are part of those projects. As we use ARPA, I've made it very clear to my folks that for us, ARPA is about helping us recover and grow. And we have to focus that on the people that were hit hardest by the pandemic. And we know, just so happens for us in the city, the people, the businesses, the areas that were hit the hardest by the pandemic are also the ones that are in our red line neighborhoods, as the birthplace of the creation of redlining through policy here in Baltimore. They're in the areas where we know we need the investment. So making sure that we're building systems that allow those businesses to grow, that we're creating innovation hubs that allow people to test new ideas, that we're providing capital, that we're breaking down barriers, that we're getting rid of antiquated systems in city government so that they're in 2021 and 1995. All of those things matter when you're talking about helping people not just recover and survive, but really building an ecosystem that allows them to thrive. And that's what we have to do.
A lot of money came to the state through the Federal Recovery Act dollars and all that. Is it getting to your jurisdictions?
Well, I guess I'll take that one first. I'm a little lucky. It came directly to me. We got it direct, and it has, and we're very, we were saying a few weeks ago, the executives, that we thought ARPA was going to be a once-in-a-lifetime thing. We now think it's going to be a twice-in-a-lifetime thing if they actually pass the infrastructure bill. So the money is great. This president and his administration really believes that cities and regions that have cities are so important. And I think that I am ecstatic because he understands the issues from top to bottom. As you know, I know we're going to talk about that a little later, with him around violence and how we have to deal with violence in our inner cities. But in that conversation, at the end of that conversation, we also had a discussion about how the American Jobs Act plays a part of that, how creating these jobs and infrastructure will mean, how focusing some of that money to make sure that folks who are coming home to our neighborhoods from prison, working on these, would deal with all these other issues. That's really the kind of partner that we have at the federal level now. We have the best federal delegation in the country. That's what my fellow mayors across the country are very jealous of our delegation. They will fight, go to bat for our region each and every day, and we know they're very skilled at what they do, and we're looking forward to making sure that we, one, use the money appropriately, efficiently, effectively, but also to have the greatest impact on how we can build a better Baltimore.
Very good.
Just to put a finer point on it, Scott,
Please.
we would not be where we are right now if it weren't for the CARES Act.
Mm-hmm.
The allocation that was passed early allowed us to stand up the vaccinations, to stabilize our finances, to pay our first responders, to do the overtime, to do the food distribution. I mean, there was so much that sort of gets lost in what that first allocation meant for local governments. And now, as Mayor Scott was saying, I think that the contact. I mean, like you go down the list of what the reimbursement programs, the grant programs to nonprofits and businesses. But now we have a chance to step back with this allocation, and now it's like how do we think about recovery? Yep. And so we made it through. We were resilient through, but that's not enough. And so having the recovery funding and whatever else may come, I'm a little jealous of what the city got relative to its sister jurisdiction, but I'm also excited for the city because I know that the mayor is going to be very intentional about how those resources can be impactful and transformative for the city and by extension this region. And so in the same way, we're going to take our $160 or so million and be very thoughtful and deliberate about how we make those investments in the county.
And I would imagine anything good for the city is good for the county and the other way around. I mean, this is one region.
Absolutely. I mean, I think any benefit that one of us has is a benefit to the other, and any detriment that one of us has is to the detriment of the others. And I think that the mayor and I have been very clear about our intentions with each other and within our jurisdictions from the get-go, which I think is a change. And I honestly think that people are now open to the idea that we are interconnected in those ways, and that any opportunity that we can collaborate, can partner. People want to see that. I mean, one of the first things we announced early on was just something as simple as snow plowing.
Yeah, it went a long way. And I think that the county executive is just right? For me, for example, I live in a neighborhood where I can literally throw a ball into Baltimore County. No one in my neighborhood thinks of it as the Frankfurt side versus the Rosedale side. It's one neighborhood, right? It's one people. And we have to understand that we are interconnected. Not just about that, we just had the big Headworks project that's going to reduce sewage backups for everyone that uses our water system. And sewage backups happen in Baltimore County and Baltimore City. Those kind of things matter. And we partnered on a lot during the session, trying to get transportation going the right way, making sure the MTA is done, and we're moving towards a regional effort to deal with public transportation because it's an issue for us. For example, we both hear from folks like the folks at Trade Point how people that live in both our jurisdictions struggle to get there by public transportation. So he and I and Calvin Ball and Stuart Pittman have to work together around those issues to make sure that the region is dealing with those issues. And the other things that we talk about, even like guns, right? The issues that we have with guns that go back and forth between the jurisdictions and all over the place throughout the state. All of those things have to be dealt with together. And I'm very happy to have my friend here with me today and the others to really be partners in it.
So when you each ran for office and earlier on in your political careers, you've had certain priorities. And you ran on those when you ran for office. Your campaign, I guess, occurred during part of the COVID period at that point. But so it changed things a little bit. But take a minute and talk about we're going to come out of COVID. Hopefully we're going to come out stronger. Talk about your other priorities for your jurisdiction.
Well, I guess for me, they haven't changed. I decided that I wanted to run for office when I was 5 years old. I was 5 years old. And and it really was because something horrible had happened in my neighborhood, literally up the hill. And I was badgering my mom, my dad, my uncles, my older cousins about why no one cared that someone literally was shot within a stone's throw of my house, and nobody cared. And my mom just calmly looked at me and said, if you want to see a change, you have to do it yourself. And for me to know that that disease is still, COVID aside, right? That disease of violence is still so indoctrinated in our community. That's going to be a priority for me. But it's going to be a priority for me, Dr. Riffin, in a way that it wasn't for the folks before, because, and I didn't really think about this until one of my older colleagues said it to me, and ex-older colleague. She said, Brandon, you're the first mayor that Baltimore's had that actually had to live through all the bad things. You don't have a memory that knows Baltimore where we didn't have gun violence. You had to go to schools with no heat and air. You had to duck bullets and have guns pointed in your face. It's different from you, and it is different from you. And what that allows me to understand is how we have to tackle the problems in a multifaceted way. No disrespect to any of my predecessors. I love them all. But we have to understand that we have to build a system where the police are focused on what they should be focused. And in Baltimore, that is a small group of people who commit the overwhelming majority of the violence in the city. And that's why I am fully committed to, and will be kicking off very soon, a group violence reduction strategy, which has been scientifically proven to work in cities across the country. Baltimore has failed to do it twice, because when you identify those people and tell them, this is your last chance, you're either going to change your life or we're going to remove you from this neighborhood, you actually have to allow them the opportunity to change their life. And what Baltimore failed to do twice is to do just that. We've already allocated the money for the folks that are going to do that work. We have the partnerships with our federal law enforcement officers. We now have the partnerships with our folks at the state level to do just that. We also have to, as you heard me earlier, deal with the flow of illegal guns into the city. We talked with the president directly about how Baltimore, 60% of the weapons we recovered last year came from other states. People where I grew up in Park Heights many of them have never been downtown, let alone to Georgia or West Virginia or Pennsylvania or California or Louisiana or any of the other places that we know guns come from. And what was one of my first priorities was to develop a program of how we're going to deal with that as well. We partner with Everytown for Gun Safety to create a one-of-its-kind software for our firearms intelligence unit that will work directly with ATF, with our partners in the other jurisdictions, to target these folks who are trafficking guns. Because, for example, if I'm going to pick on Al, if Al lives in Richmond, Virginia, and he bought 11 guns, and all 11 of the guns that Al bought just happened to be recovered on the streets of Baltimore, we know Al's luck is not that bad that all 11 guns got stolen and they ended up here. Al is trafficking weapons into our city. We have to hold them accountable. But we also have to build systems that understand how to cure ourselves of the violence. And that's why we created the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. That's why we went and did something that the city never did. I directed the director to go out and talk to the residents of Baltimore and say, how does each community, each area of the city want to be involved with reducing violence in Baltimore, so that we have a complete strategy that includes every city agency, that includes our partner state agencies, because we also have to understand that when you talk about public safety in Baltimore, I control two: the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement and Baltimore Police Department. Everything else, from jail, parole and probation, all of that is in the hands of the state. And we'll build those systems while investing in people and places that allow us to not see that happen in the first place. That's always going to be the priority for me.
And you mentioned community outreach. You
Yes.
mentioned working with individuals in the community. How do you accomplish these goals and still make residents feel that the police are on their side?
Well, first, with our police department, we have to continue our reform efforts. Our consent decree is, as was said to me by someone from DOJ, the most robust that they've ever seen. We've made a lot of progress, but we have a long way to go, as we heard last week. And what that means is that we actually have to develop, and this is something that we're starting now, community policing plans, not that we do for the community, but with them. It's why I created our Citizens Advisory for Public Safety, where we have representatives from neighborhoods around the city that are going to be working with the department to develop how we're going to interact with people in our neighborhoods, how we're going to police, because we've had this cookie cutter mentality, and we know that Baltimore is a city of neighborhoods. What works in my neighborhood in Frankfurt won't work in Sedonia, and it's literally right across the street. We know how deep that is. And we have to also build systems of accountability. I want to say thanks to our state partners who were here today for furthering the efforts to reform policing, not just in Baltimore, but in Maryland. We build those systems of accountability. We hire more people locally growing up through our high schools, people that have that lived experience, that have lived in Baltimore City. And we also reduce the burden. I think when folks think about this conversation around what police should be doing versus what they shouldn't be doing, I think they look at it the wrong way. I always make it very simple. In Baltimore, we're known for a few things. One of them is having great health and mental health organizations and institutions. So if any city in the country can get it right to not sending a police officer out when someone's having a health or mental health issue, it should be us. And that's why we're doing our 911 diversion program, because I actually, and it's ironic because this gets caught up in the quote unquote defund conversation. The first conversation that I had with anybody on the planet around diverting calls away from our 911 for police and fire to behavioral health folks was with a police commander who just happened to be the commander for the Eastern District, which John Hopkins said. And he said to me, he's like, "You're right. It's stupid that I, the commander of the Eastern District, are sending my police officers out to deal with a mental health issue, and I literally have John Hopkins right down the street. It makes no sense. And we're wasting thousands of hours for people who are doing something they're not trained to do. We have people that can do it, and then allowing them to focus on what we want them to do in the first place, which will inherently build a better relationship. Because one of the frustrations that residents in Baltimore have is that, well, they're here for this, but when I had someone breaking into my house or when someone robbing me, where were they? Well, the chances are that they were on some call that they shouldn't have been on, to be honest. We have to alleviate that burden as well.
Yeah, people don't realize the great health infrastructure we really have in Baltimore. It's really pretty, in the Baltimore region, it's really pretty fascinating. And I'm probably going to go blind from the sun, so tomorrow I'm going to have a dog. If anybody's got one of those dogs, I'm going to need one. Mr. County Executive, you had a whole, you campaigned on transparency, on open government. Talk about your other priorities today.
Yeah, I was going to say, first I want to thank Mayor Scott for making me the old seasoned veteran, for giving me like a little bit of a head start on being the younger guy in the region. But no, I mean, to Brandon's point, I mean, it wasn't as stark of an experience for me, but it was very similar growing up, right? I grew up in the steel town on the east side, and I saw the slow demise as that industry slipped away. And I saw what happened when people lost those high-paying jobs, access to healthcare, ability to provide for their family. You know, you literally see the American dream slip away in almost sort of like slow motion. And for me, it was more of like, man, I want to be a part of turning that around. And, you know, what I realized is it's not just enough to get to the place of governance to turn it around. How you govern and what you focus on once you're in office actually matters, right? So it's not just like, I'm going to fix world hunger. I'm going to fix gun violence. I'm going to fix poverty. You have to be intentional about how you do it. And the two things, and this is something that I think I will take with me as long as I'm lucky enough to be in public office, is education, which was transformative in my own life as the first in my family to go to college, you know, public school teacher, public school student. That drives a lot of me in terms of what really good education does, especially early childhood education, and how that transforms the trajectory of a young person's life. But then also having the public trust in the work you're doing and be bought into it and actually provide feedback and be critical and provide suggestions. And so that's why, you know, the education stuff we can talk about. The mayor and I have been huge fans and supporters of the work that our legislators are doing on Kerwin and the Blueprint and Built to Learn, both the inside the classroom conditions, but also the physical buildings. But the openness, accessibility, transparency is so fundamental to having people believe that whatever you're doing is actually working. And so we've been very intentional, whether it was putting in ethics reforms as our first batch of legislation, creating the county's first ever inspector general and expanding it every year since, passing a charter amendment to provide for public financing of elections, creating the county's first ever STAT program, which is now helping us identify those social vulnerability indices or childhood poverty or hunger rates, and really driving our equity agenda. Thinking about putting the budget online, so we now have people can go down to the check and see how their money's being spent. Working with Councilman Patoka to move the sessions of council to the evening originally, and now also online, and using technology to make it more accessible. And the town hall series. I mean, before I was elected, in the 2 years prior to my election, 2 people testified on Baltimore County's $4 billion budget. There are now hundreds of people that engage by testifying, and thousands of people who show up in person and virtually to engage in that conversation about what they want to see for their communities. And so it is such at the core of who I am and what I believe, but it's also so fundamental to actually create these processes and believe in them, that if you put community members and experts in a room and you say, this is the challenge, bring in national best practices, help us identify solutions. If you are open about it, if you engage people and you have the right people in the room and all the perspectives are actually represented, the results speak for themselves. And if you look at what we've been able to do, not just in the pandemic, but legislation we've passed on a split council that's been bipartisan, some hard issues. We passed police reform in Baltimore County before the state did. Thank you, state legislators, and thank you, Izzy. We passed gun safety, talking about guns being trafficked. We have our gun shops now have higher standards, and that was bipartisan, right? But these are all like tough issues that we've tackled. But because we do it the right way and we're open about it, we bring people to the table. We don't shut out Republicans, because you know what? They've got a perspective too, and that matters. And I'm a Democrat and I'm proud of it, but we're all in this together. And when we bring everybody together and we are open and transparent and connected, we're more accountable, we're stronger for it, and the results, I think, speak for themselves too.
So this is great stuff. These are 2 young guys that are sort of leading the new generation of young political folks, young leaders in our community. And I'm thrilled that you're both here today. If anybody's dying to ask a question, feel free. We'll take just 1 or 2, and then it's getting to the point of a frying pan up here. So, what's that? Oh yeah.
You can't look at John.
I'm about to melt like the witch on the Wizard of Oz. I'm just going to melt.
You're looking good though. So I want to say thank you for letting Republicans have a voice, as I am a Republican, and I appreciate that. I've worked with both of you in the past, and I will also want to echo that the dollars that are coming in from the federal government are like we'll never see again, hopefully anyway. But one of the questions was asked about small businesses and how they engage. And town hall meetings and all that are fantastic, talking about the level of engagement that you've never seen before. But you talk about your family running a small business. Do they have, not your family necessarily, but does your family have the wherewithal to go out and find ways to get to those grants? I mean, the Maryland Department of Housing, Commerce, all of them, they have millions of dollars they're giving out every year. But to those small businesses, I've been in a handful of meetings since the world has opened back up, and people are asking this question over and over again. You hear the senators come out, you guys come out and talk about it, but they're not sure how to get to the money. And from a guy that knows, you see a lot of the same people getting the money because they know how the machine works. So can you guys speak to ways that, or even theorize on ways that we could make it so that these small businesses had greater access or even awareness that there's millions of dollars available to help them get through these tough times?
Yeah, I'll just start off by saying that that's actually one of the programs that we built up through our money. Was actually BDC did a big thing where we actually helped those small businesses go out and know where the opportunities were. We're looking to expand that. Actually, we're in the running across Vegas that Bloomberg recognized that as one of the innovative things, and they're looking maybe, hopefully, to actually helping us expand that work. Because this does come from that experience of understanding how it was difficult for my family and other small business people that I know to access those things. And we're just looking to expand that work. That's things that we're thinking about with ARPA too. How do we now use that to make sure that we build the infrastructure really to connect our small businesses in the city to all the opportunities that are there, not just because of ARPA or all the other things that the federal government are doing now, but the existing programs that are always going to be there, and making that connectivity through my small business office, through BDC and all the other areas. And we're just looking to continuously expand that work.
And I'll just add, if you, as someone who owns a small business or works with small businesses, have ideas that we're missing, like that goes back to that whole conversation of like, please let us know, because we don't always get it perfectly right. So we work with chambers, we work with community associations, we work with our media partners like Jmore. We have our small business groups. But if we can be better, like, let us know, because I think that's how we just have to strive to continually improve. So thank you.
One last question over here.
One question, and then I think we're going to have to wrap because you guys are roasting, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being here tonight. This was fascinating. Thorny public policy question for you, because Dr. Ripken, I think, was
so we'll end with an easy one.
spot on about the threat that the Delta variant poses to the recovery that we are all so desperately trying to enjoy and take advantage of here. At what point do either of you anticipate restricting access to public places, places like this, events like this, restricting access from adults who refuse to get vaccinated? And what happens if that point is too late to actually arrest the trend and we wind up back where we were before?
I think what I would say to that is, one, as the county executive said earlier, hopefully we don't get to that point. But I think that for me, everything that I did with COVID, with restrictions, has been guided by public health. It wasn't just, I'm not a doctor, right? I don't go in the room and tell the health commissioner what to do. Really, there's two agency heads that have to worry about me telling them that I know anything about what they do. The Rec and Parks director, because I worked at Rec and Parks, right? And the director of the Office of Neighborhoods, because like the councilman, I worked in the Office of Neighborhoods, right? And the criminal justice director, because I worked there too. But it's really about having those folks guide us and letting us know where we are, what we need to do, where our risk levels are. But when you think about something that specific, that would have to be weighed with also with public safety things, right? Because that would be putting people like the folks that won this fabulous restaurant at risk of people losing their minds. We all know what happened in January, and we know that folks are willing to do some outlandish, crazy things to just have, quote unquote, their freedom, even if their freedom is killing other people, right? And we have to be very careful about that. But the first and most important step to any of that has to be the guidance, the public health data, and what those folks are telling us what we need to do.
Executive?
I will never forget, unfortunately, the calls that I've had to make throughout this pandemic to family members who've lost a loved one, to businesses who've lost things that, families who've lost something they've spent their entire lives building. And so I think I'll just reinforce that my goal first and foremost is to do everything we can to avoid those impossible choices. Because, as we were leading through this, one lever always affected another. These were sort of in some ways impossible choices. Nothing that any of us took lightly. But I'm with the mayor that we really are rooted in the health and the science. And I think one of the best things that's come out of this experience is that some of the largest jurisdiction leaders now talk regularly. And so we now compare notes, we sort of talk about best practices, and that's not only strengthened this Baltimore regional partnership that the mayor and I have, but I think it's expanded beyond that. And so I think there's a lot of power and confidence in having all of our health officers, right, in multiple voices, checking each other's notes and providing that sort of consensus that either collectively we all think we need to go somewhere, or we're going to push the state if we feel like they're not leading. Because one of the challenges, frankly, was the patchwork approach was very difficult in terms of enacting restrictions because people can go to Howard or Baltimore City or Baltimore County or Hartford or Frederick or, you name the jurisdiction. It's, we need to make decisions that keep our people safe, but we also recognize that we don't operate in a vacuum entirely either. So the larger the scale, the response, the more effective it's going to be as well. So I think also just the best thing we're going to do is I think keep talking, keep leaning on the science, and really in the meantime, just pushing people to get vaccinated so we can actually get through this.
So I think we're lucky, not lucky, we're blessed to live in an area where our leadership believes in science. And that's both on the Democratic and Republican side. I don't think anybody would argue that the governor doesn't believe in science. He does. But you've got leadership in other places that just don't believe in science, or they think it's to their benefit to deny science. So I think you're going to see a response, and you guys probably agree, a lot of this is going to be led by the state. And so hopefully the resurgence won't be as bad as I feared. It certainly is going to be worse in the states with low vaccination rates. And let's all hope for the best. And let's end it on that. Lauren has come up, and that's her subtle way of telling me I'm out of time. And thank you both for being here today.
Thank you so much. This was terrific. That's it. It's really been lovely having you.